Rahul Singh, Managing Partner at Ampersand Investment Advisors, joins us on the show right now. Rahul, hi, morning. Debating as to what this mudslinging battle round 2 at Infosys is all about, and a second public note coming in from N.R. Narayanamurthy just yesterday, talking about how unhappy he is with some of the COO salaries. This time around, he's talked about the compensation given to UB Praveen Rao. As an investor, how should now one approach and look at this bit of news flow on Infosys? And would you say it's an irritant, or would you say, just completely shut an ear off to all that is coming out of Narayanamurthy and, completely ignore the news? Because we do have some market experts who do believe that, it should all be ignored at this juncture.
Well, I think it's a minor irritant, so I think it's somewhere in between because the issue can escalate, although I think there is a small probability of that happening because the quality of the board and the quality of the promoters is at a pedestal. So I don't think the issue will escalate beyond a point. I think the issue therefore is a minor irritant. I think there are bigger issues in the IT sector which one has to really see how they pan out. Obviously a strong INR is adding to those headwinds, but I think the bigger issue is on the immigration bill and what kind of a shape it will take on the H-1B visa and also in terms of the overall headwinds which have been there over the last 2 years on cloud and automation. So I think those are much bigger issues for which the stock has to kind of pay a price or has to be at these low valuations. I won't see this issue as being something which can escalate and take the stock down further.
So Rahul, just to take that point forward, since there are bigger issues grappling not just Infosys but the rest of the IT space as well, what's the call on IT? Should one start nibbling in, because right now is perhaps the darkest hour for the IT sector, or would you say need some more clarity on which way the H-1B visa regulations are going to pan out, how the environment for Indian IT per se is going to thrive at a time when US has such a strong stance, and then perhaps take a call on investments?
Yes, I think the good thing about Indian IT sector valuations is that they are much more reasonable compared to the other defensive sector which has done badly, which is Pharma over the last 2 years. So you've seen valuation in low teens to mid-teens in IT compared to still 20 times in Pharma on an average. So I think the point of valuation is there. I think from a timing perspective, we would want to wait for more clarity on especially the immigration headwinds and which way the wind blows there in terms of the exact nitty-gritty of the new H-1B visa policy. The strong INR does make a difference, but it's not a huge issue as of now unless INR goes towards 60. So I think it's at an interesting point in terms of valuation. In timing terms, maybe not.
So Rahul, do you think for those who bought PSU banks with the assumption that a big bank NPA policy was coming, they could be in for some disappointment, and that could exert some pressure in PSU banks and the bank nifty per se? Do you think buying PSU banks with the assumption that something will come from government is a very naive assumption?
It's not naive, but it is definitely naive to assume that it will happen as per market's wish in terms of timing. The reason I say that is because if you've been reading interviews of Mr. Vinod Rai or the other bank chairman, it's very clear that there is something working, but maybe the first step is more oversight committees and not really a bad bank. A bad bank would probably follow, but it will involve more stakeholders. It will probably involve stakes from all private sector banks. We've seen Kotak Bank already announcing its intention to participate if there was an opportunity to create a bad bank. So it's work in progress. I don't think these things happen in a jiffy. It will take time to take shape because the issues here are very, very complicated. There is an issue of capitalizing the bad bank, who participates, how is it going to be staffed, what are the kind of capabilities it's going to be there. So it will involve multiple layers of discussion between government and private sector, and it's not going to be an overnight affair. So to that extent, if the expectation was of that, there could be disappointment. I'm not very sure that a market is that naive to assume that it will happen overnight. I think market is more mature people who are taking a call on some of these banks are taking a more long-term call on resolution of some of these issues and not necessarily over a weekend.
Rahul, coming on Reliance, the Jio launch has been a success. All these concerns which everyone has raised that Jio is going to be dragging the aggregate balance sheet. For the moment, those concerns are getting they're getting addressed.
Yes, I think partially addressed for sure. I think the issue here is that there is still the jury is still out on what kind of recharges they are getting on these 72 million subscribers, and whether they are low denominations versus the 303, because they definitely seem to be promoting more and more 300 recharges and not the low denominations, because they have given further free 3 months if you recharge for 300 rupees. So I would look at this 72 million with a little bit of pinch of salt, because the exact recharges amounts will be much lower probably, and also of lower denominations. So look, the nature of the Indian market is that it's a 95-98% prepaid market, and you have to fight month after month for these recharge volumes. And if you are if you are in a dual SIM environment, I think one has to take these numbers with a pinch of salt. These are not numbers which you can say are in your bag for 1 year or 2 year time frame. Ultimately, the network quality will drive the stickability of these numbers. So I would not get too excited by these numbers eventually. Yes, it's partially a relief, there's no doubt, because there's a lot of capital which has been invested in RGO. So to that extent, the monetization of that, any monetization is a positive. But the question to ask really is, even with 100 million subscribers with an average of say 200 rupees ARPU, are you going to be generating enough returns compared to your cost of capital? And I think that is where the reality check will happen, maybe 3 months down the line or 6 months down the line. As of now, I think the stock is at a point where it is fairly pricing in right amount of optimism, but also reasonable caution in terms of the issues which I mentioned.
Rahul wanted to discuss the prospects of PSBs. While the NPA policy did not come about in the cabinet meet on Friday, much against what the market was expecting, but it seems like sooner or later, the policy is going to be put in place. What's the call now on what one should do with PSBs, considering a large part of the outperformance in the entire space is already behind us?
I think we should wait for a minor correction. I think in PSBs, clearly there is some expectation built in, and as I said, it could take months, not weeks, to put all these bad bank kind of a structure in place, if at all there is going to be that kind of a structure. So there could be a minor disappointment. We are also running into the March quarter results, so the NPA and the slippages would again start to dominate the talk. There is a credit policy also in this week. So I think there are data points which suggest that from a valuation point of view, you could get a better opportunity. But as I said, I think if one were to look at PSU banks, one will have to look at and take a 1 year to 2 year view. It's very difficult to take a quarter view or a 6 month view, because individual banks will go through different kind of timelines in terms of their resolution. We've already seen that some banks, the slippages are stabilizing, whereas in some other banks the slippages continue to go up, even outside the watch list. So therefore, one will have to be extremely circumspect and therefore take their calls very selectively, and not really a thematic call at this stage. But having said that, I think the whole bad assets and the NPL issue is reaching some kind of final stages. Whether it takes 3 months or 6 months is the question now. We obviously said that last year also, and we were proven wrong. But this time it does feel like the government wants to play a role in resolving some of these issues. And that, I think, is an additional data point compared to where we were last year, where the government had a slightly hands-off kind of an approach.